Protect your money by planning for your divorce. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people making in divorce is not planning for the process. And that can be so expensive. You need to go into the divorce process with a plan, knowing how you're going to approach the process, being ready to find the right attorney, knowing what you want in terms of the assets and the children and custody and all those kinds of things. If you have a methodical approach to your divorce, you're going to save yourself so much money. Mostly, you're going to save money on attorney's fees, but you're also probably going to get a better settlement. Both of those things can mean a lot of money. Now, the other big mistake that I see people making is approaching their divorce very emotionally. And I know that divorce is a very emotional time. I'm not saying shut that off. What I'm saying is have a time and a place to feel all the feels, to know that this is difficult and you're going to feel angry and sad and betrayed and alone and all those kinds of things. You can absolutely feel those things and work through them. But divorce is a business transaction. So there will be times when you have to get down to the business of divorce and you have to think logically and you have to set aside the emotion and really look at the facts, weigh the pros and cons, and make an informed decision. So, information is your friend in your divorce. The more you know, the better you are going to fare. So that means researching issues that are present in your divorce, because every divorce is different and there's different details to it. Knowing what your rights are in your state. Every state has their own laws about divorce, has picky things that will happen during your process or things that are available to you or mandatory under the law, things like that. Knowing those things and how they will come into play in your divorce will be very, very important. Asking your attorney about your options and your potential outcomes in your case so you really understand what you should be prepared for, what you can expect, and knowing your numbers, right? I'm a numbers person. So I'm really focused on knowing the numbers because it's such a big part of your case. And your settlement in your divorce will affect you for years to come. So I want you to get the best possible settlement that you can get. How do you plan for your divorce? Well, first of all, I want you to go into this having a strategy. You can't just go into your divorce hoping for the best. You have to know what you want, what you're willing to give up, what your husband wants so that you can negotiate about those kinds of things. You have to know about your big money issues. You want to know about the property division. So when we're dividing up the assets, the home, the accounts, all of those kinds of things, you want to be very ready for that. You want to know what it is that you have, and you want to know what the law says about what you're entitled to. The division of the debts, you want to be informed about that as well, because just like the house and the retirement accounts are divided, the debts will be divided too. And you might each be taking half of the credit card debt or things like that. And you want to understand that. I want you to be prepared for the money issues like child support and spousal support, knowing how in your state those things are calculated, whether you're entitled to them, what the details are, and how your situation fits into your state's rules. Okay, so planning for your divorce. I've got some big areas of things that we're going to talk about. The first is knowing the divorce process. I want you to understand the divorce process and the important legal terms that you're going to need to know. When your attorney uses a legal term that you're not familiar with, don't be afraid to ask about it so you know what's going on. I want you to be prepared by knowing the divorce process and what's going to be required of you. What kinds of forms will you have to fill out? Documents that you'll need to gather. Whether you're going to be required to go do mediation. In some states, there is mandatory mediation. Like the judge is not going to listen to your case before you both go in front of a mediator who's going to try to basically broker a deal between the two of you. Listen to your side, listen to his side on whatever the issue is, and then try to get you to maybe meet in the middle somewhere. Much of the information about the divorce process that I want you to have, you're going to be able to learn from your attorney. You can do some research online, but every state is going to have different rules. You have to be really careful when you're researching online. Does this information apply to me or not? So, probably rely more so on your attorney for understanding that process in your state. Your attorney is going to be able to tell you locally, we have some different rules. We do some things a little different way, or they'll be able to tell you this is how long things take here. You can expect to wait 60 days before this happens. All those kinds of practical things about where you are, your attorney is going to be able to tell you. And, when we're talking about legal terms, I want you to know what's going to happen, like the discovery process. That's a process where we are literally discovering information from the other side. So, this is where we're going to exchange documents with each other, ask each other questions, on paper. The other person has to respond to those questions in a sworn statement where they're swearing to tell the truth. So, it's all official. We will do things like requests for production of documents where your attorney is asking the other side to turn over statements or contracts or things like that. And I want you to know about the divorce process when it comes to subpoenas. A subpoena is a legal request of someone or a business to turn over documents or information. Where you will most often see a subpoena used in your divorce case is with a bank or a credit card company. We want those account statements. Maybe your ex isn't being forthcoming with it. We can send a subpoena right to the bank, and the bank is going to have to give us copies of the statements. So subpoenas are a very powerful tool. I want you to understand these types of things that are available to you. The next part of planning for your divorce is protecting yourself. I want you to think about legally and financially protecting yourself. This is going to include things like getting a fresh new email address for you, one that isn't logged into any computer or tablet or phone anywhere that your ex couldn't accidentally have access to, so you can communicate securely with your attorney, with family and friends, or whoever you may need to about your divorce process. Get a secure mailing address. So make sure wherever your mail is going that your ex couldn't intercept anything so that if something important is coming, you know you're going to get it. Have a safe place to keep all of your documents. If it's digital documents, have a cloud service like Google Drive or Dropbox or Box. Make sure that that is very secure with a good password, that your ex can't get into that, see your documents, potentially delete them. If you have paper documents, have a trusted friend or family member secure those documents for you, or use a safe deposit box at a bank. I always tell my clients, if you find important documents in your home, take copies of those and then put those copies off-site so that they can't ever disappear. When you're protecting yourself, I want you to open a bank account in your name only. That's going to be important because with only your name on it, you're going to be the only one who can access that money. Same with a credit card. You want one in your name only, that only you can access. But even more important about this credit card is that while you are still married, you can use household income as the basis for getting that credit card, right? You have to qualify for a credit card. They ask you how much you make. Use your household income. This is especially important if you're a stay-at-home mom and you don't have an income source of your own, or if you have part-time earnings only, so your income is low. While you're still married, you can use that household income that includes your husband's income and have a better chance of qualifying for that credit card. Even if you don't need the credit and you don't plan on using it, I always recommend getting the card and setting it aside for safekeeping. If you ever need that credit, you can always use it. I tell people to run a credit report on themselves. You want to make sure you know exactly what debts are out there in your name, but do not break the law. Don't run a credit report on your husband without his permission. That's illegal. Don't put a tracker on his car. Don't try to put spyware on his phone. All those clever things that sometimes people do in an effort to gather information, some of it is illegal. And I don't want you getting involved in any of that, potentially making you look bad at some point during the divorce. Your next step in planning for your divorce is getting an attorney. I want you to make sure that you interview 2 to 3 attorneys before you decide on one. Don't just go with the first attorney that you talk to. It's really important, especially if you've never been involved in the legal system before, never worked with an attorney before. I just want you to have a few different conversations so that you can see who is on the same page as you, who you communicate well with. And you can't know that if you only talk to one attorney. So sitting down and having consultations with 2 or 3 is really going to help you figure out who you might work well with. And I always say, you don't really know if this attorney knows what they're talking about. So if you have one conversation, it's really hard to judge, do they know their stuff or not? But if you talk to 3 attorneys, by the time you get to the third one, I think you're feeling a little more experienced and you're probably going to have a better idea of the 3 of them, who seems the most knowledgeable, who will I get along best with. When you do talk to an attorney, I want you to be prepared with a list of questions that you're going to ask so that you sort of have a methodical approach to this so that you don't forget things. With the Divorce Money Guide, we have a very lengthy list of questions that you can ask for an attorney. We have a guide called Prepare for Divorce. In there, you will see all of these questions that we recommend you asking. You don't have to ask all of them, of course, but they're a guideline to help get you thinking about what you might want to ask. We talk about asking things like, do you focus on family law or do you do other areas of law as well? Because you're wanting to make sure that you're working with someone who's very experienced in family law. You'll want to ask them about their approach to cases. Do you prefer settling? Do you prefer going to trial? Are they more cooperative? Do they like more of a fight? It's going to depend what your goal is with your divorce, how you think your divorce is going to play out. Which of those answers will be best to you? If you have any special issues in your case, you're going to want to ask about that. So some have special concerns with child custody, for example. And so you might want to ask some questions about their experience with child custody issues. Ask them about the process for your divorce from start to finish. Ask them about issues that might be contested. And I mean the issues that you don't agree with your ex on. How do they think those issues might be resolved? Like in our state, who usually wins on this issue and why? The attorney can tell you a lot of important information about that. You might want to ask if your state requires mediation or can you choose to engage in mediation and how would that work? How long will your case take? Like, what are the typical timelines? And they're probably going to say, well, it depends on how much you guys agree on, but they might be able to give you a range that will help you pinpoint how long it's going to take. How much can I expect the attorney's fees to be? Again, this is another one that the attorney is probably going to say it depends how much you agree on, but they ought to be able to give you a range of fees so you at least know what to expect. Ask them how they like to communicate with you. Would they rather have you call them, email them, text them? How often would they like to hear from you? How will you get documents to them? Do they want hard copies from you? Email? Do they want you to upload to their system? And how often can you expect to hear from the attorney? You want to be able to stay on top of your case with following up. So ask them if there is a particular task that is happening in your case, ask them, how long is this going to take? Or when should I expect an answer on this? And then can I follow up with you on that? So all these kinds of things to lay the groundwork for understanding how you will work with this attorney. We also have a list of money questions that you can ask them. So all sorts of things depending on your particular situation so that you know what to expect. How will child support be calculated? Things like that. I really want you to understand with your attorney how much their retainer is going to be, who's going to be working on your case from their office, what the billing rates are of everyone who will work on it, and what is the process for you putting down a retainer and paying the future bills. Your next part of preparing for your divorce is getting documents. So you've got to gather all those important documents, especially, since I talk about money, the financial documents. I want you to put together a list of all of the accounts that you know about, what bank or credit card company they're through, whose name is on the account, and that list will help you be able to gather all of your account statements. It's sort of going to be your working list, right, that you can check off when you've gotten the statements for each of those accounts. You're then going to get your account statements. How are you going to get them? Well, if you have access to the account, you can go to online banking, download your statements for credit cards, bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement accounts. If you don't have access to them, the next step will probably be asking your ex to provide the statements. If your ex is unwilling to provide the statements and is just not cooperating, then the next step after that would be subpoenaing the banks and credit card companies. You're also going to want to gather your tax returns. Probably the last 3 to 5 years of tax returns would be good for you to gather. How are you going to get those? Well, you might have copies in your home. Your ex might have copies. You might have a tax preparer who has the tax returns that you could get them from. Maybe you use an online service like TurboTax to do your taxes, and you might be able to download them from there. And if all else fails, you can go directly to the IRS and get your tax returns there. You can even go online and get them. All you have to do is verify your identity, and you'll be able to download tax documents for any tax return that has your name on them. So, getting these documents is really important, and doing so before you lose any access is something that I really advocate. So, if you have access to a bank account today and you're able to log into online banking, then go ahead and start downloading statements. Because sometimes in the process of breaking up with your ex, I find that someone's name is taken off an account or a password to online banking gets changed. Somehow you don't have access anymore. And even though you can still get those statements through the legal process of the divorce, it's so much easier to get them on your own. And it saves you money if you can get them on your own. Just get them as soon as you have access to them. Don't take any chances that you could lose your access. Then your next step of planning your divorce is organizing your documents. You've gotten all these documents, the statements, the tax returns. You want to keep them in good order. Organizing them is going to save money with your attorney because the last thing you want to do is pay your attorney by the hour to put statements in date order or to check if all the statements are there. So, one of the things I ask people to do in order to stay organized, first of all, is put together a timeline of financial events. So, literally writing down the dates that important financial things happen. When we bought a home, maybe when someone changed a job and got a different retirement account, or when you purchased a car or paid off a car. Those issues can come up at some point in the divorce. You might be asked, when did something happen? And if you have this timeline of events, it's really helpful for that. The other reason the timeline of events is really helpful is because as you're putting it together, it sometimes jogs your memory about important financial things that happened in your family. It might cause you to remember that you had an account at a bank that you had forgotten about, and you would want to follow up on that in the divorce. So that's a really important part of getting organized. Then I want you to put together a document inventory for your account statements and a document inventory for your tax returns, where you're going to be checking off, do I have all of the monthly statements? Do I have each year's tax return? Again, in our Prepare for Divorce guide, we have worksheets that help you document all of this so that you can check off what you have, make sure you're not missing anything, make sure it's all in good order. Once you have all those documents, you want to put them in date order. So if we're working with account statements, segregate them by account, and then for each account, put them in order by date. Same with the tax returns, put those in year order. It's so much easier for your attorney to deal with those documents if they're already in order. And again, you're not paying for your attorney to go through and organize things. Now, if your documents are on paper, make sure that at all times you keep one clean copy of those account statements that you never write on. If you want to write on statements, if you want to use highlighters, that's fine, but make a copy and write on that copy so that you always have one clean set because you may have to turn over that set to the court. You don't want your handwriting on them. The same if you are just having digital copies of your statements. If you just have them as PDFs saved on your computer, I like to keep one master copy of the statements. If I'm going to, work with those statements, move pages around or things, I may just keep one master copy, original format, original everything, before I start working with any of the documents, just in case something happens. Your next step in planning for your divorce is knowing what to give to your attorney. So what is your attorney going to need? Anytime you're making any sort of allegation in your divorce, you're going to need evidence. So if you say, my husband is hiding money, the question is going to be, where is your proof? Your proof is probably going to be in the account statements. Maybe you've seen that he transferred money to an account that you never knew about. That evidence is going to be very important. So if you're making an allegation to your attorney, they're going to say, where's the evidence? You're going to want to have that ready. But you're also going to be giving to your attorney all of those statements and tax returns that you already organized. So be prepared for that. There may be other information that the other side asks for. They might ask for your pay stubs. They might ask for information on insurance policies that you have. Anything that they might ask for, you're going to want to give that to your attorney in an organized fashion. Now, when it comes to the evidence, let's say, for example, that you found transactions related to gambling on the statements, and your ex gambled away a whole lot of money, and you want to try to get that back in the divorce. You've seen cash withdrawals at the casino. You've seen credit card charges at a casino. You might have seen cash advances on a credit card. What you're going to be doing in order to bring that evidence, that proof to your attorney, is putting together a list of all of these transactions that you've identified. Now, that could be a handwritten list, or it might be a spreadsheet if you're good at putting together spreadsheets. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a good, organized list. Along with that list, you're going to have account statements that have those transactions highlighted. Those statements are the actual proof of what has happened. So that list of transactions will be the summary of everything, and the statements that go along with it will be your actual evidence. This is just an example of how to put together this evidence when your attorney is saying that they need it. Your last step in planning for your divorce is fighting strategically. And I don't mean fighting like necessarily arguing and being ugly about it. I just mean you have to advocate for yourself. You have to fight for your rights. Fight to get what you're entitled to, right? Now, you can't go into your divorce just hoping for the best. You've got to know what it is that you want. Know your priorities when you're going into your divorce. What is most important to you? Rank those priorities so that you and your attorney know what's most important to you. You want to know what your legal rights are to some of these things because some of them under the law, you might just be entitled to get it. Other things, the law might not be specific about it, but it is something that you need to have, and you'd want to know that. There are other things that are nice to have, and you might feel strongly about them, but maybe they're not as important as the things that you're legally entitled to or the things that you need. And know in your priorities what you're willing to let go of. Now, on the Divorce Money Guide website, we have a free PDF called Planning for Your Divorce. And this is going to get you started on some of the important steps you need to take on the financial issues. So if you are thinking about divorce or you're early on in the divorce, this is going to be a great tool to help get you started on the path. And of course, we're going to put a link to that in the show notes. We also have our guide that I mentioned, which is called Prepare for Divorce. And that guide includes videos, an ebook, worksheets, checklists that are going to walk you through the steps that I walked through today, but in more detail, showing you exactly what to do and how to do that. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Thanks for listening. I hope that this helped inform you on how to really protect your money by planning for your divorce.